Hi, I'm Jonathan Turpin, Senior Energy Consultant at SOCOTEC. I'm responsible for helping clients cut their energy usage and carbon emissions. Much of this is focused around energy audits, ESOS and net zero. ESOS is the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme that comes around every 4 years. The first deadline was 5th of December 2015 and the final deadline for Phase 3, which we are in at the moment, is the 5th of December 2023. So if you qualify for ESOS, you must ensure notification with the Environment Agency by this date at the absolute latest. The qualification date for Phase 3 was the 31st of December 2022 and the compliance deadline is the 5th of December 2023 as set out in the 2014 ESOS regulations. BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, have confirmed that there will be no change to the qualification criteria before the qualification deadline. Qualifying organisations are any UK undertaking that either employs 250 or more people, or has an annual turnover in excess of £44 million and an annual balance sheet total in excess of £38 million, as well as any organisations that are part of a corporate group containing an undertaking that meets these criteria. Where a corporate group participates in ESOS, unless otherwise agreed, the highest UK parent will act as a responsible undertaking and be responsible for ensuring the group as a whole complies. If you qualify for ESOS and your organisation is fully covered by ISO 50001, you do not need to carry out an ESOS assessment. You just need to notify the Environment Agency that you're compliant with ESOS. If your organisation is not fully covered by ISO 50001, you need to carry out an ESOS assessment. It is also possible to use energy directly covered by display energy certificates, that's known as DECs. Now, this is not an avenue we would normally recommend, as this will not be permitted for Phase 4 and you would then be starting from scratch with detailed energy site audits, which could potentially cost you more as you won't necessarily have a foundation to start from. After Phase 2, the Environment Agency issued 2,751 compliance notices and 2,133 enforcement notices, with 82 civil penalties amounting to over £1.2 million. Businesses that meet the qualification thresholds must calculate their total energy consumption across 12 consecutive months for the buildings, transport and industrial processes they are responsible for. The total energy consumption must include the 31st of December 2022. The current ESOS regulations require the significant energy consumption to be at least 90% of the total energy consumption, although BEIS has indicated in the government response to the consultation on ESOS that they are intending to increase this to at least 95% of the total energy consumption. These are all proposals at present and they still have to be ratified by UK Parliament. The de minimis threshold is purported to be being reduced from 10% to 5%. Each ESOS audit must now include an intensity metric. There is a requirement to share ESOS reports with subsidiaries within the group. There is a requirement for public disclosure of high-level recommendations by participants. And there is a requirement for participants to set a target or action plan following the Phase 3 deadline, on which they will be required to report against for Phase 4. And finally, there's collection of additional data for compliance monitoring and enforcement, although we do not know yet exactly what data the consultation is actually expecting. We know the qualification date is the 31st of December 2026 and the notification deadline is the 5th of December 2027. In Phase 2 and 3, it was not necessary to implement any of the recommendations identified, but it will be required for the recommendations to be implemented in Phase 4, although we don't know the full details yet. ESOS is also likely to extend to medium-sized businesses, although we don't know exactly what that criteria is concerning the turnover and number of staff. BEIS is working on a new PAS standard for net zero audits, which is intended to be introduced this year so that businesses can include net zero on a voluntary basis as part of their ESOS audit. This is where you show how you plan to cut your carbon emissions by 2050 at the latest, as this is the set date where the UK must achieve net zero. You need to highlight what action you're going to take to achieve this, whether it be by upgrading your buildings, equipment, industrial process or transport. The best way of doing this is to move away from fossil fuel to electricity, which is generated by renewable energy. Organisational structure and foreign entities, where an organisation is owned by a foreign company, and if one of their subsidiaries in the UK falls under ESOS, then all their subsidiaries in the UK also need to be included. We will initially send out a scoping questionnaire to you to get more details about your company, followed by a scoping meeting with you where we can discuss exactly what we will need to include in your ESOS audit. This is to ensure that we do enough site surveys to fulfil adequate sampling requirements and ensure we capture all of your fleet or grey fleet. This all depends on the type of business you have. This is part of the questionnaire and the scoping meeting that we'll be carrying out. We'll get to compliance via site audits and a transport audit, an overriding summary report, presentation to the appropriate director of the organisation, and sign off by the lead assessor and the director. And finally, notification to the Environment Agency, which needs to be done before the 5th of December 2023. Lastly, we will put together your evidence pack, which is a folder containing all of the data and information we have used to compile your reports. Please contact us if you require any help with your ESOS audit. And once your audit has been completed, we can also help you towards implementing any of the recommendations we have identified.